The Galactic Hierarchy. Ambassador Kira Chin stood before the Galactic Council's towering assembly, her small frame dwarfed by the massive beings that surrounded her. The council chamber was a cathedral of chrome and starlight, built to accommodate species that made humans look like children's toys. To her left, the Vorthan representative, a creature named Thermac, rose 12 feet tall, his crystalline armor gleaming under the chamber's ambient glow. His people could survive in the vacuum of space for hours and lift objects 10 times their considerable weight. To her right, Ambassador Xylith of the Kareen hovered in her containment field. The Kareen were beings of pure energy, capable of processing information 1,000 times faster than any organic brain. Their ships crossed galaxies while human vessels still struggled with solar systems. Behind them all loomed the Drachner delegation. War-born and battle-tested, the Drachner had conquered 17 systems before joining the Council. Their leader, General Vexer, possessed claws that could tear through starship hulls and a hide that deflected plasma fire. And then there were the humans. Kira adjusted her simple gray suit, feeling the weight of her species' inadequacy. Humans had been granted Council membership 3 years ago, not because they were strong but because the Council believed in including all sentient life. It was charity thinly veiled as diplomacy. The human delegation wishes to speak? Council Prime Orthian's voice boomed through the chamber. The ancient being's 4 eyes regarded Kira with something between pity and boredom. Yes, Council Prime, Kira said, her voice barely carrying in the vast space. We wish to propose an increase in defense allocations for the Outer Rim colonies. Intelligence suggests. Intelligence. Vexer's laugh was like grinding stone. What would humans know of intelligence gathering? Your people still use physical scouts when we have quantum surveillance. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Kira's jaw tightened, but she continued. Our scouts have identified unusual energy signatures near the void reaches. We believe. The void reaches are empty space, Xylith interrupted, her voice a chorus of harmonics. We have scanned those sectors for decades. There is nothing. Perhaps nothing your sensors can detect, Kira pressed. But our people have seen. Enough. Orthian raised one massive appendage. The Council appreciates human enthusiasm. But we cannot allocate resources based on feelings and primitive observations. Your proposal is denied. Kira felt her colleague Marcus Webb tense beside her. He was former military, and she could sense his frustration radiating like heat. With respect, Council Prime, Marcus said, stepping forward, my people didn't survive 3 world wars and a near-extinction event by ignoring warnings. No, Thermac rumbled, his voice like shifting tectonic plates. You survived through luck and breeding quickly. The galaxy does not run on luck. The council chamber filled with the alien equivalent of laughter. Clicks, harmonics, subsonic rumbles that made Kira's bones ache. This session is concluded, Orthian declared. Humanity's petition is recorded and denied. We will reconvene in 30 cycles. As the massive beings filed out, Kira gathered her papers with shaking hands. 3 years of this. 3 years of being treated like the galaxy's charity case. They're going to regret this, Marcus muttered beside her. Maybe, Kira replied quietly, watching the empty signatures flicker on her data pad. But we can't make them listen. We're too small. Too weak. Too a human. What neither of them knew, what none of the council knew, was that in the void reaches, something ancient was stirring. Something that had slumbered for 10,000 years, waiting for the galaxy to forget the old warnings. The silence was coming. And when it arrived, the strong would fall first. The first contact. The distress signal reached Council Prime's flagship 72 hours after the session. By then, 3 Vorthan colonies had gone silent. Kira was in her quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel Perseverance when the emergency summons came through. The holographic display showed Orthian's 4 eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, they showed something other than condescension. Fear. Ambassador Chin. Your presence is required immediately. Bring your military consultant. The connection severed before she could respond. When Kira and Marcus materialized in the council's war room, the scene was chaos. Species that had never shown emotion were broadcasting distress in every language and frequency. The massive tactical display showed the outer rim, and where 3 Vorthan colonies should have been, there was only static. What happened? Marcus asked, his military training taking over as he studied the display. We don't know. Thermac's crystalline form had lost its luster. 6 hours ago, Colony Vex 7 reported an unidentified vessel entering orbit. Then, nothing. No explosion. No debris. Just silence. The same occurred with Vex 9 and Vex 12, Xylith added, her energy form flickering with distress. We sent reconnaissance drones. They transmitted for exactly 17 seconds before ceasing all function. Show me the footage, Marcus said. Orthian hesitated, then nodded. The display shifted. The drone's camera showed a Vorthan colony world, crystalline cities that caught the light of twin suns, aerial platforms where millions lived and worked. Then the sky darkened. Not with clouds or ships, but with something that drank the light itself. The image became corrupted, fragments of data showing impossible geometries and structures that hurt to look at. And then, for just one frame, something emerged from the darkness. Kira gasped. It was organic but wrong, like someone had taken the concept of a predator and stripped away everything except the idea of hunger. The creature was impossibly large, its form shifting and uncertain, as if reality couldn't quite decide what shape it should hold. Emperor's blood, Marcus whispered. The transmission ended. 17 seconds, just as Xylith had said. This is what your scout saw, isn't it? Vexor demanded, turning to Kira. His claws were extended, but for once the threat wasn't directed at her. In the void reaches. We saw ships, Kira said quietly. Different from anything in our databases. They moved wrong. Bent light around them. Our scout vessel barely escaped. Why didn't you say this before? Thermac roared. We did, Marcus said coldly. 3 days ago. You laughed. The war room fell silent. How do we fight them? Orthian asked. It was the first time Kira had heard the Council Prime ask a question without already knowing the answer. I don't know if we can, Marcus said, studying the frozen image. But I know we need to try. What are our combined military assets? Xylith's form brightened as she processed. The Vorthan Armada, 12,000 warships. The Drachner fleet, 8,000. The Kareen maintains 6,000 vessels. Lesser species contribute approximately. How many human ships? Vexor interrupted. Kira and Marcus exchanged glances. 400, Kira admitted. Total. Including support vessels. The number hung in the air like a shameful secret. The mighty Vorthan fleet numbered in the thousands. Humanity's entire military could barely crew half a sector. Pathetic, Vexor muttered. Maybe, Marcus said. But we're here. And we're willing to help. Are you willing to listen this time? Before anyone could answer, another alarm shrieked through the war room. The tactical display updated. 5 more colonies. 3 Kareen, 2 Drachner. Silent. They're not random attacks, Marcus said, his eyes racing over the pattern. Look at the sequence. They're testing us. Testing each species' response time, military capability, sensor range. Impossible, Thermac said. That would require intelligence, strategy. They're intelligent, Kira said quietly. That's what scares me most. Whatever these things are, they're not mindless beasts. They're learning. Another update. 2 more colonies, both Vorthan. They're accelerating, Marcus observed. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in 6 days. Maybe 5. Orthian's 4 eyes closed. When they opened, something had changed in them. Desperation, perhaps. Or the first stirrings of respect. Ambassador Chin. Consultant Webb. Humanity has experience with extinction events, yes? With fighting impossible odds. Kira thought of the history lessons from her childhood. The atomic fires of World War III. The collapse that followed. The desperate centuries of rebuilding while storms ravaged a broken earth. Yes, she said. We do. Then please, Orthian said, and the word cost him dearly, help us. The Council's weakness. The War Council assembled within the hour. Every major species sent their finest military minds to the strategy chamber. Generals who had conquered worlds, admirals who commanded fleets that could crack planets. And Marcus Webb, a human colonel who'd fought in 3 border conflicts nobody outside Sol System had cared about. The solution is obvious, General Vexor declared, slamming his clawed hand on the tactical table. We strike with overwhelming force. My Drachner fleet will spearhead an assault on their largest concentration. Where is their largest concentration? Marcus asked calmly. Vexor's lips curled back, revealing rows of predatory teeth. The void reaches. Where your scouts claim to see them. That was 2 weeks ago. They're not there anymore. Marcus gestured to the display. They're everywhere now. Or nowhere. They hit colonies and vanish. No warp signatures, no traceable trajectories. How do you attack an enemy you can't find? Then we fortify, Admiral Thex of the Kareen suggested, her energy form pulsing with calculated thought. Concentrate our forces around core worlds. Let them come to us. And abandon the rim colonies? Kira said. That's billions of people. Necessary sacrifice, Vex replied without emotion. We preserve the strong to rebuild after the threat passes. Marcus leaned back, studying the alien faces around the table. For all their physical superiority, for all their advanced technology, they were making the same mistakes humanity had made centuries ago. You're thinking like conquerors, he said quietly. Like predators at the top of a food chain. But this enemy? They're not here to conquer. They're here to feed. Explain, Orthian commanded. Marcus pulled up the drone footage again, freezing it on the moment the creature emerged. Look at the colony. Not a building damaged. No signs of weapons fire. But every living thing? Gone. Not killed, consumed. Whatever these things are, they don't want our territory or our resources. They want us. He advanced the footage, showing the darkening sky. And they don't fight like soldiers. They fight like a plague. Hit fast, spread wide, overwhelmed through numbers and speed, not strength. So we need speed of our own, Thermac rumbled. Rapid response fleets. Strike teams that can teleport. You still don't get it, Kira interrupted, surprising herself with her own boldness. She stepped to the display, manipulating the star map. Every colony they've hit has one thing in common. Advanced detection grids. Military installations. Heavily fortified worlds. She highlighted the pattern. They're targeting our strongest positions first. What? Because those are the places with the best sensors, the quickest response times, the most dangerous weapons. They're blinding us. Taking out our eyes before they go for the throat. Understanding rippled through the chamber. The core worlds, Xylith said, her harmonics taking on a discordant tone. Our capitals, our military headquarters. All have the most advanced detection systems in the galaxy, Marcus finished. When they're done with the rim, they'll come for the center. And you won't see them coming until it's too late. Then what do you propose? Vexer demanded. If our strength is a weakness, if our technology betrays us, what hope do we have? Marcus and Kira exchanged glances. They discussed this on the way to the meeting, knowing it would sound insane. We stop fighting like the strongest species in the galaxy, Marcus said, and start fighting like the weakest. Silence. Explain, Orthian said, his tone dangerous. Humanity survived on a poisoned world with nothing but primitive weapons and determination, Kira said. We didn't outpower our problems. We outthought them. Outadapted them. We became the best at surviving because we were too weak to do anything else. Marcus pulled up a new tactical display. Your fleets are powerful, but they're predictable. Your weapons are devastating, but they're designed for fighting other fleets. Your sensors are sophisticated, but they're looking for conventional threats. He met each alien gaze in turn. This enemy isn't conventional. There's something old. Something that knew the galaxy before your civilizations even existed. Fighting them with your strengths is exactly what they expect. And what do they not expect? Thermac asked, genuine curiosity breaking through his skepticism. Humans, Kira said simply. They've been taking out your monitoring stations, your military outposts. But they haven't touched the human colonies. Know why? Because we barely register on the galactic threat scale. We're not worth the effort. That's your plan? Vexer laughed, the sound like grinding rock. To hide behind your weakness? No, Marcus said. To weaponize it. He expanded the tactical map, showing something that made the assembled generals lean forward. Human technology is primitive, yes. Our sensors are crude. Our weapons are simple. Our tactics are thousands of years behind yours. His smile was sharp. But that means we use methods and technologies that this enemy hasn't seen in millennia. Maybe never. Our ships don't use quantum drives. We use old-fashioned fusion rockets that leave heat signatures completely different from modern vessels. Our weapons aren't energy-based. We still use kinetic projectiles, chemicals, even nuclear devices. Barbaric, Thex murmured. Unexpected, Marcus corrected. And in war, unexpected is everything. You want us to devolve? Vexer's tone mixed disbelief with disgust. I want you to adapt, Kira said. We've studied the attack patterns. The creatures react to energy signatures, quantum fluctuations, the technological markers of advanced civilization. But human tech. It's so primitive it doesn't trigger the same response. We might be able to get close when your fleets can't. Orthian was silent for a long moment, his four eyes studying the humans with new calculation. Even if this madness has merit, he finally said, humanity has 400 ships. We need thousands. Then build them, Marcus said. You have the resources, the manufacturing capability. Strip the sophistication from your designs. Make them simple. Make them old. Make them human. And who will crew these primitive vessels? Thermac asked. We will, Kira said. Humans will train your people. Teach them to think like prey instead of predators. To fight smart instead of strong. This is insanity, Vexor declared. But his claws had retracted. We are the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. You ask us to become lesser? No, Marcus said quietly. We ask you to survive. The tactical display updated again. 3 more colonies gone silent. And this time, one of them was Careen Prime's outer moon. They were running out of time. Orthian stood, his massive form filling the chamber. The council will vote. But Ambassador Chin, Consultant Webb, you had better be right. Because if you're not, you've convinced us to hand the galaxy to the darkness. Kira met his 4-eyed gaze steadily. And if we are right? If this works? Then, Orthian said slowly, humanity will have saved us all. And we will never forget the debt. The vote was called. And for the first time in galactic history, the council chose to follow humanity's lead. The human way. 6 days. That's how long Marcus estimated they had before the silence reached the core worlds. 6 days to revolutionize an entire galaxy's military doctrine. The Vorthan construction yards became a hive of frantic activity. Ships that should have taken months to build were assembled in hours. But these weren't the elegant quantum drive cruisers the galaxy had perfected over millennia. These were crude things. Fusion reactors, chemical thrusters, ballistic weapons. Human designs. Kira stood in the observation deck of Perseverance, watching a Vorthan engineer named Court struggle with a reactor assembly that any human mechanic could have built blindfolded. This is impossible, Court rumbled, his crystalline fingers too large and too precise for the crude controls. The tolerances are too loose. The design is inefficient. How do your people fly these death traps? Carefully, Marcus said from behind them. He'd been running training simulations for the last 72 hours straight, surviving on stimulants and spite. And that's lesson 1, human ships aren't efficient. They're reliable. They break in predictable ways. You can fix them with spare parts and determination. But my calculations show a 17% failure rate. Is acceptable, Marcus finished. Your quantum drives have a 0.01% failure rate, sure. But when they fail, you're dead. When our drives fail, you reboot them and keep flying. Court's crystalline form flickered with what Kira had learned to recognize as Vorthan frustration. This is madness. We are engineers of perfection. And you're about to die perfectly if you don't learn, Kira said, more sharply than she intended. The stress was getting to all of them. On the other side of the shipyard, a Drachner warrior was having an even worse time. General Vexor's lieutenant, a soldier named Kroth, sat in the pilot seat of a retrofitted human fighter, his massive frame barely fitting in the cockpit. This manual control is primitive. Kroth roared over the comm, where is the neural interface? The predictive targeting. You're the interface, Marcus said tiredly. You point the ship, you fire the guns. Just like we showed you. But the delay, I think to turn and the ship turns a full second later. Then think faster, Marcus replied. Or better yet, learn to anticipate. Humans can't process information like the Careen or move as fast as the Vorthan. We survived by thinking 3 steps ahead. The training exercise began. Kroth's fighter lurched into space, immediately spinning out of control. The Drachner's roar of frustration could be heard through the hull. This will never work, Xylith said, materializing beside Kira in a shimmer of energy. My people's cognitive processors are designed for efficiency. You're asking us to deliberately slow down, to add delays, to make errors. I'm asking you to be unpredictable, Kira said. Your efficiency is beautiful. It's also a pattern. Patterns can be learned, exploited. This enemy has had 10,000 years to learn how advanced species fight. They've never fought humans. Because humans weren't worth fighting, Xylith said, but there was no malice in it now. Just observation. Exactly. We're the galaxy's blind spot. Kira pulled up a tactical display. Look at this. Every species they've encountered, they've adapted to within hours. Vorthan crystalline shielding? They found the resonance frequency and shattered it. Careen energy weapons? They absorbed and redirected them. Drachner claw ships? They just ate them. But they haven't encountered human weapons, Xylith said slowly, understanding dawning. Right. Our missiles are too slow to bother dodging, until they realize we packed them with 10-kiloton warheads. Our ballistic weapons are too primitive to shield against, until 1,000 tungsten rods hit at relativistic speeds. We're so beneath their notice that we might actually hurt them. An alarm interrupted the conversation. Another colony gone dark, but this time something different. The colony's final transmission included 3 seconds of footage. The council gathered in the war room again, their numbers fewer now. 2 species had withdrawn their delegations, retreating to their core worlds to prepare for the inevitable. The footage played. A human colony. Nova Terra, population 800,000. The sky darkened just like all the others. The creatures emerged, vast and hungry. But the humans fought back. Crude chemical rockets streaked upward. Nuclear warheads detonated in the upper atmosphere, creating a wall of fire and radiation. And when the creatures descended anyway, ground-based railguns opened fire, simple magnetic accelerators that threw metal at hypersonic speeds. The creatures hesitated. For just a moment the feeding frenzy paused. The darkness recoiled. And then it adapted. The creatures absorbed the nuclear fire, learned the pattern of the railguns and descended anyway. Nova Terra went silent like all the others. But those 3 seconds of hesitation changed everything. They can be hurt, Thermax said, his voice filled with something between hope and rage. They can be surprised, Marcus corrected. That's not the same thing. But it's a start. The colony still fell, Vexor observed darkly. Because they fought alone, Kira said. 800,000 humans with improvised weapons against an enemy that's consumed billions. But they proved the concept works. Orthian studied the footage again, his 4 eyes narrow. How long until your retrofitted fleet is ready? 4 days for the first wave, Marcus said. 200 ships crewed by mixed teams, human pilots with alien engineers. They won't be pretty and they won't be perfect. But they'll be unexpected, Orthian finished. He turned to face the assembled council. I am old. I have led this council for 3 centuries. In that time, I have seen wonders and horrors beyond counting. His gaze fell on Kira. But I never thought I would live to see the day when humanity taught the galaxy how to wage war. We're not teaching you to wage war, Kira said quietly. We're teaching you to survive it. There's a difference. Is there? Xylith asked, genuinely curious. Yes, Marcus said. War is what you do when you're strong enough to choose. Survival is what you do when you have no other choice. Humans have spent 10,000 years with no other choice. That's why we're still here when species twice as old have turned to dust. The war room fell silent, broken only by the steady pulse of alerts as more colonies fell into darkness. 4 days, Orthian said finally. Make them count. Because in 4 days the silence will reach the core worlds. And when it does, we'll discover whether humanity's way is brilliant. He looked at the darkening map of the galaxy. Or our final mistake. The first strike. The retrofitted fleet launched at dawn on the 4th day. 200 ships that looked like they'd been assembled in a junkyard, carrying crews who'd spent the last 96 hours learning to fight like primitives. Kira watched from the bridge of the Perseverance as the fleet formed up. Each ship was unique. Vorthan engineers had refused to accept standard designs, insisting on improvements that Marcus had to argue down. Draknar warriors had wanted larger weapons until someone reminded them that bigger wasn't better against an enemy that fed on energy. Kareen pilots had struggled with manual controls until human trainers taught them something alien to their nature. Intuition. They're ready as they'll ever be, Marcus said beside her. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd been awake for 3 days straight. That's not very reassuring, Kira replied. It wasn't meant to be. The tactical display showed the target. A mid-rim colony world called Thessar 9 that had gone dark 6 hours ago. Long enough for the silence to establish itself, but recent enough that it might still be there. The fleet's jump was nothing like the elegant quantum tunneling of advanced drives. These ships tore through space the old way, fusion drives pushing them to relativistic speeds, then decelerating with chemical thrusters. It was violent, inefficient, and left an energy signature completely different from modern vessels. Exactly as planned. Approaching target zone, the navigation officer reported. He was Vorthan, his crystalline form hunched over controls designed for human hands. Dropping to sublight in 30 seconds. Kira's fingers tightened on the armrest. This was it. Either humanity's gamble would pay off, or they just sent 200 ships into oblivion. The fleet emerged from FTL and immediately went dark. Every non-essential system powered down, sensor arrays running passive, weapons cold. They drifted toward Thessar 9 like debris, like nothing worth noticing. The colony world appeared on visual scanners, and Kira felt her stomach drop. The entire planet was shrouded in darkness. Not clouds or smoke, but that same light-drinking shadow they'd seen in every transmission. And moving through it were shapes, the creatures, vast and wrong, feeding on whatever life remained. "Sensor reading?" Marcus asked quietly. "Nothing," the Korean sensor officer replied. Her energy form flickered with confusion. "Our advanced arrays detect massive energy signatures, biological impossibilities, quantum irregularities. But the human sensors..." She paused. "They show only background radiation and chemical traces." "Because we're not looking for what they are," Marcus said. "We're looking for what they do. Heat signatures. Radiation absorption. Simple cause and effect." Picking up something, another officer called. "Thermal bloom at 097 Mark 43. Chemical analysis suggests organic decomposition at an accelerated rate." Kira felt sick. The creatures were feeding, breaking down biomatter to fuel their impossible existence. "That's our target," Marcus said. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Task Force Alpha. Weapons free on my mark. Remember your training, short bursts, conventional ordnance only, no energy weapons until they adapt. And if things go wrong..." He paused, looking at Kira. "Run," she finished for him. "There's no shame in retreating to fight another day." A chorus of acknowledgments came back in a dozen languages and modalities. Kira heard fear in those voices, but also something else. Determination. Perhaps even hope. "All ships," Marcus said. "Mark." 200 ships came alive at once. Chemical thrusters fired, pushing them toward the planet. Ballistic weapon systems armed, rail guns, missile pods, even modified asteroid launchers that threw raw matter at relativistic speeds. For a moment nothing happened. The darkness continued its feeding, unaware or uncaring about the approaching fleet. Then the humans opened fire. Tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Chemical warheads armed with fission bombs. Railgun slugs powered by simple magnetic induction. Nothing sophisticated, nothing elegant, just mass and energy converted into violence through brute force. The projectile struck the darkness. And for the second time in recorded history, the silence recoiled. The creatures writhed, their forms destabilizing as primitive weapons tore through flesh that advanced energy weapons couldn't touch. The darkness itself seemed to convulse, pulling back from the planet's surface like a wounded animal. "It's working." Thermac's voice boomed over the comm, "Emperor's Light, it's actually working." But Kira saw what the others missed. The darkness wasn't retreating, it was learning. "All ships, evasive maneuvers now," Marcus shouted. The creatures struck back. But their response was calibrated for modern weapons, for quantum missiles and energy lances. When the primitive human fleet scattered using chemical thrusters and pure momentum, the creatures' counterstrike passed through empty space. "Second volley," Marcus commanded. "Hit them while they're recalibrating." Another wave of primitive violence hammered the darkness. More creatures fell, their forms dissolving into constituent matter. The fleet was actually winning. Then everything changed. A new signature appeared on the sensors. Something vast, something that made the feeding creatures look like insects by comparison. It emerged from behind Thessar 9's moon, and Kira understood with horrible clarity that everything they'd fought so far had just been the vanguard. This was the silence itself. "Mother of God," Marcus whispered. The entity was the size of a small moon, a shape that hurt to perceive directly. It didn't move through space so much as reality bent around it, making room for its impossible existence. And it was looking at the human fleet with something that might have been curiosity. "All ships fall back," Kira ordered. "Retreat to minimum safe distance." But it was too late. The entity moved and space itself folded. 15 ships vanished in an instant. Not destroyed, simply gone as if they'd been edited out of existence. "Scatter," Marcus roared. "Don't give it a concentrated target." The fleet broke apart, 200 ships becoming 200 separate targets. The entity reached out again, and this time Kira saw the mechanism. It was reading quantum signatures, tracking the sophisticated components still present even in the retrofitted ships. "It's targeting our drives," the Vorthan engineer called. "The quantum course, they're too advanced, they're giving us away." "Emergency purge of all quantum systems," Marcus commanded. "Switch to pure chemical propulsion." "But then we can't escape." "We can't escape anyway." "Do it." One by one, the ships dumped their quantum cores, becoming truly primitive vessels relying on nothing but chemical reactions and human ingenuity. The entity's attention wavered as if it had lost track of them. But it had learned enough. The creature's lesser forms began adapting, changing their approach. They were learning to see humans not as advanced targets, but as prey worth hunting. Kira, Marcus said quietly, we need to fall back. We've proven the concept works, but we can't win this fight. Not yet. Kira knew he was right. But she also knew what would happen if they retreated. The entity would follow. Would learn. By the time they could mount a second assault, it would have adapted to human weapons too. Unless... How many nuclear devices do we have left? She asked. Marcus checked his display. Combined fleet? Maybe 300 warheads. Why? Because, Kira said, her mind racing through calculations she hoped were wrong, that entity is vast but it's concentrated. All that mass in one location. And nuclear weapons work on a principle older than spaceflight, pure conversion of matter to energy. You want to nuke it, Marcus said flatly. I want to see if something that feeds on advanced energy can survive the oldest, dirtiest bomb humanity ever invented. She turned to face him. We load every warhead onto one ship, program it to detonate on proximity. Send it in on a collision course. That's suicide for the crew. Then we use an automated ship. Kira pulled up the fleet roster. The Defiant, she's too damaged to make it back anyway. We evacuate the crew, load the warheads, and send her in. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll set the charges personally. Like hell you will. You're needed here. And you're our diplomat, Kira. Not a martyr. Someone needs to arm those warheads manually, Kira said. The entity is blocking remote signals. And I'm rated on human nuclear devices. She smiled weakly. Remember? You made fun of me for taking that certification course. Said no one uses nukes anymore. Kira? This is what we do, Marcus. Humans. We make the impossible choices so others don't have to. She stood, straightening her uniform. Get the fleet ready to jump the moment the Defiant detonates. You'll have maybe 30 seconds before that entity realizes what happened. The evacuation took 8 minutes. The Defiant's crew transferred to other ships, leaving Kira alone on the bridge with 300 nuclear warheads and a course plotted straight into the heart of the silence. This is insane, Thermac's voice came over the comm. Ambassador Chin, please, there must be another way. There isn't, Kira said simply. She armed the first warhead, her hand steady despite her racing heart. Just promise me one thing. When this is over, when you tell the story of today, remember it wasn't humanity's strength that mattered. It was our weakness. Our willingness to do what needed to be done. We will remember, Orthian's deep voice rumbled through the connection. We will all remember. Kira armed the final warhead and locked the detonation sequence. The Defiant accelerated toward the entity, chemical thrusters pushing her to maximum velocity. Through the viewport, Kira could see the thing waiting for her. It had noticed the ship, but it wasn't attacking. It seemed curious, as if wondering what this tiny primitive vessel could possibly hope to accomplish. 300 meters, the computer announced in calm, clinical tones. 200. 100. Kira closed her eyes and thought of Earth. Of green hills and blue skies, of the scarred but surviving world that had taught humanity the most important lesson of all. It doesn't matter how weak you are. What matters is what you're willing to sacrifice. Detonation in 5, 4, 3. The universe became light. The sacrifices echo. The blast wave from 300 nuclear warheads detonating simultaneously registered across half the sector. Ships that had already initiated quantum jumps were thrown off course. Space itself rippled from the violence of humanity's oldest weapon unleashed at its fullest magnitude. Marcus watched from the bridge of perseverance as the sensors went white, then slowly resolved into something comprehensible. Where the entity had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and radiation. Did we get it? Thermac asked, his crystalline form dim with shock. Scanning, the Korean officer reported, her voice strained. Detecting massive energy dispersion. Quantum signature degradation. Molecular breakdown at the... She stopped. It's gone. The entity is gone. A cheer erupted across the fleet channels, dozens of species celebrating in their own ways. But Marcus felt only emptiness. They'd won, yes. But the cost. Kira, he said quietly, staring at the radiation cloud that was all that remained of the Defiant and its pilot. Sir, another officer interrupted. We're picking up something else. The smaller creatures, they're falling back. Not retreating strategically, just fleeing. Like their coordination is broken. Marcus straightened, forcing himself to focus. There would be time to mourn later. All ships pursue and destroy. Don't let them regroup. If that entity was their coordinator, we need to eliminate the rest before they adapt or find a new leader. The battle that followed lasted 6 hours. Without their massive coordinator, the feeding creatures were dangerous but manageable. They fell to human weapons, to primitive violence delivered with precision and determination. When the last creature was destroyed, the fleet hung in space above Thessar 9, battered but victorious. Final casualty report, Marcus said, his voice hoarse. 43 ships lost, the tactical officer reported. 62 more damaged beyond immediate repair. Personnel casualties across all species. He paused. 8,412 dead. 15,000 wounded. And one diplomat who'd saved them all. Transmission incoming, the communications officer said. Council Prime Orthian. The hologram materialized, and Marcus was struck by how much older the ancient being looked. War aged everyone, even those who'd lived for centuries. Consultant Webb, Orthian said. The Council has received your preliminary reports. The victory at Thessar 9 has changed everything. The lesser creatures are fleeing across the sector. Without their coordinator, they're vulnerable. Then we hunt them down, Marcus said flatly. Every last one. Agreed. But there's something else. Orthian paused. We've been analyzing the entity's remains. My science teams believe it wasn't the only one. The energy signatures suggest there are others, perhaps dozens scattered across the galaxy. They're ancient, older than recorded history. They've been sleeping in the void, waiting. Waiting for what? For the galaxy to forget them. To grow complacent. Strong. Orthian's 4 eyes fixed on Marcus. Ambassador Chin understood something we didn't. These entities don't hunt the weak. They hunt the strong. That's why they ignored humanity for so long. That's why they targeted our most advanced colonies first. Marcus felt the truth of it settle over him. We were beneath their notice because we were too primitive to matter. And that primitiveness saved us all. Orthian's form seemed to solidify with resolution. The Council has voted. Humanity is hereby granted full military authority in this war. You will train our forces, command our fleets, teach us to fight like you do. You're giving humans command of the galactic military? Marcus couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. No, Orthian corrected. We're acknowledging that you already won it. Through sacrifice, strategy, and courage, humanity has proven what true strength means. It's not about power or technology. It's about what you're willing to do when extinction comes calling. A priority message interrupted them. Marcus opened it and felt his heart skip. Life signs, he read aloud. Sir, we're detecting a life pod. Single occupant. Broadcasting human identification codes. Location. Marcus demanded, already moving. Edge of the radiation cloud. She must have ejected before the detonation. Marcus's hands were shaking as he pulled up the pod's telemetry. The reading was weak but stable. Get a recovery team there now. Fastest ship we have. Already dispatched. Thermac's voice rumbled over the comm. And Webb? I'm leading the recovery personally. We owe her that much. The wait was agony. 30 minutes while the recovery ship crossed the debris field. 15 more while they secured the pod. And finally, the message Marcus had stopped believing he'd hear. Recovery successful. Ambassador Chin is alive. Injured but alive. Marcus sagged against the console, relief flooding through him. Around the bridge, the crew erupted in celebration. She ejected, he said wonderingly. She set the bombs and then ejected. Did you expect less? Orthian asked, and there might have been amusement in his tone. She's human. Making impossible choices and then surviving them anyway, that's what you do. 2 hours later, Kira was in the Perseverance's medical bay, covered in burns and radiation sickness but conscious. Marcus stood by her bedside, trying to find words that didn't sound inadequate. You're an idiot, he finally said. I ejected at the last second, Kira replied, her voice weak but steady. Programmed the pod's thrusters to ride the blast wave. Figured the radiation would mask my signature long enough to get clear. That's insane. The timing alone. Was measured in milliseconds, yes. Lucky for us, I'm very good at math. She smiled then winced. Did it work? The entity's gone. The fleet's intact. We won. Marcus pulled a chair closer. And the Council just made humanity the military leaders of the entire Galactic Defense Force. Of course they did. Kira closed her eyes. We showed them how the weak survive. Now they need us to teach them. Can you do it? Led a galactic war while recovering from radiation poisoning? I can do anything, Kira said. I'm human. We specialize in the impossible. The next morning, Kira stood before the assembled council despite medical orders to rest. Her skin was healing under advanced treatments, but the burns would scar. She wore them like medals. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. Yesterday we achieved our first major victory against the Silence. But we must understand, this is just the beginning. Our intelligence suggests dozens more entities exist, scattered across the galaxy. Each one commands countless lesser creatures. Each one has been learning, adapting, preparing. She pulled up a star map showing the entities' projected locations. They're waking up. And when they're all active, even our primitive weapons won't be enough. Then what do you propose? Vexor asked. His tone held none of its earlier condescension. We adapt faster than they do, Kira said. We use humanity's greatest strength, not our weapons or our technology but our creativity. We've spent 10,000 years finding new ways to survive. Now we teach you those ways. She gestured to Marcus. Consultant Webb will lead the military training. Every species will learn human combat doctrine, human tactics, human survival skills. But that's not enough. We need to think bigger. Bigger than rebuilding our entire military doctrine? Thermac asked. Yes. Because the Silence isn't just strong, it's ancient. It remembers things we've forgotten. So we need to remember too. Kira looked at each council member in turn. How many ancient civilizations have risen and fallen in this galaxy? Hundreds? Thousands? What weapons did they use? What knowledge did they have? Understanding dawned across alien faces. You want to excavate dead civilizations, Xylith said. Search for ancient weapons. I want to learn from every species that ever faced extinction and found a way to survive, Kira corrected. Humanity isn't special because we're strong. We're special because we remember. Every war, every plague, every disaster, we record it, study it, learn from it. That's what we need to do now. Learn from the galaxy's dead. This will take time, Orthian said. We have time, Marcus interjected. The entities are waking slowly. They're coordinating but they're careful. They don't know we can hurt them now. That gives us an advantage. How long? Vexor demanded. Best estimate? 6 months before they mount a coordinated assault. Maybe a year if we're lucky. Marcus pulled up tactical projections. We use that time to fortify, to train, to learn. And when they come for us again, we'll be ready. And if we're not? Thermac asked quietly. Kira's expression hardened. Then we do what humans always do. We adapt. We improvise. We sacrifice. And we survive. Because that's what the weak do best. The council voted unanimously. Humanity would lead the defense of the galaxy, not through strength, but through the hard-won wisdom of species that had spent millennia on the edge of extinction. As the meeting adjourned, Orthian approached Kira privately. Ambassador Chin, he said. When you first addressed this council, I pitied you. Humanity seems so small, so helpless. I was wrong. You weren't wrong, Kira said. We are small. We are helpless by your standards. But we're still here. And now so are you. Because you taught us weakness could be strength. No, Kira corrected gently. I taught you that survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the last one standing when the dust settles. Humanity's been doing that for 10,000 years. Now it's your turn to learn. The last stand. 6 months passed in a blur of preparation. The galaxy transformed itself, shedding millennia of advancement to embrace humanity's primitive wisdom. Vorthan shipyards produced vessels that would have embarrassed them a year ago. Draknar warriors learned to fight with chemical weapons instead of claws. Kareen minds practiced intuition alongside calculation. And humanity? Humanity did what it did best, taught the galaxy how to survive. Kira stood in the command center of Bastion Station, a massive installation built in the past 4 months using combined council resources. Around her, holographic displays showed the defensive grid. Thousands of retrofitted ships, planetary defense networks stripped of sophistication, sensor arrays running on technology older than most council species. Final reports, she said, her voice carrying to every station in the command center. Vorthan 4th Fleet reports ready, Thermac announced. He'd lost weight in the past months, the strain of commanding primitive vessels showing in his crystalline structure. 6,000 ships, full complement of ballistic weapons. Draknar strike groups Alpha through Gamma ready, Vexor rumbled. The proud general now wore human-designed armor, carried chemical explosives alongside his natural weapons. 2,000 vessels in close support formation. Korean Defense Network active, Xylitha's harmonics chimed. 4,000 ships running on manual controls. Predicted combat efficiency, unpredictable. As designed. Marcus approached with the final readiness report. Human fleets positioned across all critical sectors. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Which isn't very ready at all, Kira said quietly. But it'll have to be enough. The waiting had been worse than the battle at Thessar 9. Every day long-range scouts reported more entities waking. The ancient things coordinated now, learning from their fallen siblings' mistake. They were careful, methodical, gathering strength for one overwhelming assault. Today that assault would come. Contact, the sensor officer called. Multiple quantum signatures at the galactic rim. There. Emperor's blood, there's hundreds of them. The main display lit up with hostile markers. Not hundreds, thousands. Lesser creatures pouring through the void like a wave of darkness. And behind them the entities themselves. 12 massive signatures, each one comparable to the thing Kira had destroyed at Thessar 9. Fleet status. Kira asked, forcing calm into her voice. All ships responding. Holding formation. Awaiting orders. This was it. The moment 6 months of preparation had built toward. 13 species united under human command, facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations for eons. Open a fleet-wide channel, Kira said. The command center fell silent. Across the galaxy, on thousands of ships crewed by dozens of species, soldiers and warriors and pilots listened. This is Ambassador Chen to all fleet elements. 6 months ago, humanity was the weakest species in the Council. You could have left us behind. Let us fend for ourselves while you face this threat with your superior strength and technology. She paused. You didn't. You listened. You learned. You trusted us with your lives. She looked at the holographic display, at the sea of hostile contacts flooding toward them. Now I'm going to tell you something the Council never understood before. Humanity didn't survive 10,000 years because we were lucky. We survived because we were willing to do whatever it took. To sacrifice everything. To make choices that stronger, better species wouldn't even consider. Kira's hands tightened on the command console. These entities think they're facing the same galaxy they conquered eons ago. They think advanced means predictable. Strong means vulnerable. They're wrong. Because you're not those species anymore. You're something new. Something that combines Council strength with human desperation. And that terrifies them. She could see it now, the entities hesitating at the edge of the defense grid, analyzing, calculating. They'd expected overwhelming force to crush the galaxy's defenders. Instead, they found something they couldn't predict. So here's what we're going to do, Kira said. We're going to show them what the weak look like when we're pushed to the edge. We're going to fight with every crude weapon, every primitive tactic, every dirty trick humanity ever devised. And when they adapt, we'll adapt faster. When they learn, we'll improvise. When they think they've won. She smiled grimly. We'll show them that the most dangerous species in the galaxy is the one that's been dying since the day it was born and still won't lie down. A roar of approval erupted across the fleet channels. Vorthan crystalline harmonics, Drakner battle cries, Korean combat algorithms all expressing the same sentiment. Defiance. All ships, Kira commanded. Weapons free. Show them what we learned. The battle began. The entities advanced with confidence, their lesser creatures forming a living wall of teeth and hunger. They expected energy weapons, quantum missiles, the sophisticated warfare of advanced civilizations. They got tungsten rods traveling at relativistic speeds. Chemical explosives packed with fission bombs. Railgun slugs and missile swarms and good old-fashioned kinetic kill vehicles. Mass and velocity converted to violence through simple, brutal physics. The darkness recoiled just as it had at Thessar 9. But this time there were 12 entities. They adapted quickly, their lesser creatures learning to dodge the primitive weapons, to disperse before impacts, to absorb the blast waves. They're learning, Marcus said, watching tactical displays update in real time. Faster than we hoped. Then we changed the lesson, Kira replied. Execute Protocol Delta. Across the fleet, ships activated systems that had been deliberately kept offline. Not advanced systems, the opposite. Chaos generators, electromagnetic pulse bombs, radiation dispensers, even chemical weapons banned for centuries. Humanity's dark arsenal, refined through millennia of finding new ways to kill. The entities adapted to those too, but slower. Each new horror required analysis, understanding, counter-tactics. And while they learned, the fleet inflicted damage. 2 hours into the battle, the first entity fell. It dissolved under concentrated nuclear bombardment, its mass converted to radiation and free atoms. The fleet cheered, but Kira saw the truth. The other 11 had learned from their siblings' death. They wouldn't fall for the same trick. Time for the desperate measures, she said quietly. Marcus nodded grimly. He'd argued against this plan, but Kira had overruled him. Some sacrifices were necessary. All human vessels, Kira broadcast. Execute Omega Protocol. Across the battle space, 500 human ships broke formation. They dumped their remaining munitions, purged life support, diverted all power to engines. And then they accelerated, not toward the entities but away. They fled, broadcasting distress calls, showing every sign of a routed force. The entities took the bait. 3 of them broke off to pursue the fleeing humans, their lesser creatures swarming after what seemed like easy prey. They'd learned to respect primitive weapons, but they still saw weakness as an invitation to feed. The human ships led them on a chase across the sector, always staying just out of reach. Behind them, the main fleet engaged the remaining 8 entities, buying time. 30 minutes into the chase, the human ships reached their destination, the Kepler Belt, a dense asteroid field that most species avoided because of its unpredictable trajectories. All ships, full stop, the human fleet commander ordered. 500 vessels killed their engines, their momentum carrying them deep into the asteroid field. The entities followed, their hunger overwhelming their caution. And then every asteroid in the belt detonated simultaneously. Over the past 6 months, human engineers had seeded the entire field with fusion bombs. Primitive devices, undetectable to sophisticated sensors looking for quantum signatures. 10,000 warheads all triggered at once. The 3 entities vanished in a wave of nuclear fire that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Back at the main battle, the remaining 5 entities felt their siblings die. And for the first time they knew fear. All ships advance. Kira ordered. They're uncertain. Exploit it. The fleet surged forward, no longer defending but attacking. Ship crews that had spent months learning human tactics applied those lessons with desperate creativity. Vorthan vessels used their crystalline hulls as battering rams. Drachner fighters deployed chemical weapons in atmosphere breaches. Kareen energy beings possessed damaged enemy vessels, turning them against their own kind. And humans? Humans did what they'd always done, fought with every weapon, every tactic, every last ounce of will. The battle raged for 18 hours. One by one the entities fell. Some to overwhelming firepower. Others to clever traps. One to a Vorthan commander who deliberately crashed his dreadnought into the creature's core at relativistic speed. When the last entity dissolved into its constituent atoms, the fleet hung in space, battered and exhausted. Of the original 13,000 ships, fewer than 8,000 remained combat-capable. Casualty reports showed numbers that would haunt Kira for the rest of her life. But they'd won. Scan all sectors, Kira ordered, her voice hoarse. Confirm no hostile contacts. Long minutes passed while sensor arrays swept the surrounding space. All clear, the officer finally reported. No entity signatures detected. Lesser creatures are fleeing or dying without coordination. Ma'am, I think we did it. The command center erupted in exhausted celebration. Species that had never shown emotion openly wept with relief. Warriors who'd spent months in constant terror finally allowed themselves to believe they might survive. Kira sagged in her command chair, feeling every one of her years plus the few decades this war had added. Marcus appeared beside her, offering a stimulant drink she waved away. It's over, he said. Is it? Kira pulled up long-range sensor data. There could be more entities. Deeper in the void, further from inhabited space. Let them stay there, Marcus said. We proved we can fight them. That's enough. For now. Kira stood, straightening her uniform. But we can't forget. Can't grow complacent. This galaxy was nearly destroyed because we got too comfortable being strong. So we stay weak? Thermac asked, approaching. His crystalline form was cracked and dim, but his voice held new respect. Keep using these primitive weapons? No, Kira said. We stay humble. We remember that strength without wisdom is just another form of weakness. We keep the lessons humanity taught you, even as you advance. Especially as you advance. Orthian's hologram materialized, the ancient being looking centuries older than when they'd first met. Ambassador Chin. The Council wishes to address you formally. Will you attend? An hour later, Kira stood before the full Galactic Council for the first time since the war began. The chamber was different now, smaller, more intimate. War had reduced the Council's numbers, and those who remained had changed. Ambassador Kira Chin, Orthian began. 6 months ago we gave humanity command of galactic defense because we saw no other choice. We were desperate, afraid, humbled by an enemy that had proven our weakness. He paused, his 4 eyes sweeping the assembled delegates. Today we are victorious. The silence has been defeated. The entities destroyed. The galaxy is safe, thanks to the sacrifices of 13 species fighting as one. His gaze returned to Kira. But primarily thanks to you. To humanity. You showed us that weakness could be strength. That survival mattered more than pride. That sometimes the smallest voice needs to be the loudest. The Council has voted, Xylith announced, her harmonics carrying across the chamber. Henceforth, humanity will hold permanent representation on the High Council. No longer as probationary members but as full equals. And more, humanity will serve as the galaxy's strategic advisors. Your species' experience with survival, with desperate measures and impossible choices, has proven invaluable. We're making the weakest species the galaxy's strategic planners? Vexor said. But he was smiling. I never thought I'd see the day. We're not weak, Kira said quietly. We never were. We were just fighting with different strengths. And now so are you. She looked around the chamber at faces both alien and familiar. This war taught us all something vital. It's not about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It's about being willing to adapt, to sacrifice, to do whatever it takes to protect the people you care about. That's what humanity learned over 10,000 years of survival. And that's what you learned in 6 months of war. So what now? Thermac asked. We rebuild? We evolve, Kira said. We take the best of Council advancement and combine it with human pragmatism. We build a galaxy that's both strong and wise. Because the next threat might not be entities from the void. It might be something else entirely. And when it comes, she smiled. We'll do what we always do. The weak will survive. The humble will endure. And humanity will be right there beside you, reminding you that sometimes, the best weapon is the one nobody expects. The Council chamber filled with sounds of approval, clicks, harmonics, roars, all expressing the same sentiment. Not condescension now but respect. Hard-earned, blood-bought respect. As the session ended and delegates filed out, Marcus joined Kira at the observation window. Below them, the reconstruction fleets were already at work, rebuilding what the war had destroyed. Think they'll actually listen? Marcus asked. Or will they go back to their old ways once the fear fades? Some will forget, Kira admitted. That's what comfortable species do. But some will remember. And the ones who remember will teach the next generation. That's how evolution works. Not through strength but through learning. Very philosophical. I learned from the best. Kira looked at him. Humanity's been teaching that lesson for millennia. Now we just have a bigger classroom. They stood in silence watching the stars. Somewhere out there, other threats waited. Other challenges. Other impossible odds. But for the first time in galactic history, the response wouldn't be overwhelming force or superior technology. It would be something simpler, something humanity had perfected through centuries of desperate survival. Adaptation. Innovation. Sacrifice. The willingness to do whatever it took, no matter the cost. Because in the end, that's what made species truly strong. Not their weapons or their technology, but their refusal to give up even when extinction came calling. Humanity had taught the galaxy that lesson. And the galaxy would never forget it.